Ethan Cole wasn't a man who trusted easily. People lied, cheated, and took advantage. He had seen it happen too many times. So when he left his wallet on the table, it wasn't by accident. It was a test. But what happened next? He never saw that coming. The late-night diner was nearly empty, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the faint scent of grease from the grill. Ethan sat in a corner booth, dressed casually in jeans and a fitted black shirt, a far cry from the tailored suits he usually wore. No one here knew who he was. That was the point. His eyes flicked to the waitress moving between tables, refilling coffee cups and scribbling orders. Sophie. He had read her name off the small tag pinned to her uniform the last time he was here. She intrigued him, not because of her looks, though she was striking, but because she wasn't like the others. No fake smiles, no desperate attempts to impress. She treated him like any other customer, and that was rare in his world. Tonight he had decided to test her. He finished his meal, set his wallet at the edge of the table, thick with cash and black credit cards, and waited. Would she take it? Would she check inside? Would she pretend not to notice but slip it into her pocket when no one was looking? People always revealed their true nature when they thought no one was watching. Sophie walked over with the check, barely glancing at the wallet. You need anything else? Ethan shook his head. Just the check. She nodded, picking up his empty plate, and then, finally, her eyes landed on the wallet. For a split second, she hesitated, just long enough to make his pulse tick up. Then she did something that caught him completely off guard. She picked it up, turned toward him, and tossed it onto his lap. You left that, she said casually. Try not to drop your fortune next time. Ethan stiffened. No one had ever treated him like that. Most people would have either stolen it or grovelled at his feet while returning it. Sophie just walked away like it meant nothing. He sat there, stunned, watching as she moved to another table, chatting with a customer as if the last 5 seconds hadn't just shattered everything he thought he knew about people. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole didn't feel like he was in control. And he hated that. Or maybe he liked it. Ethan tapped his fingers against the wallet, his mind replaying the moment over and over. She hadn't even looked inside. No curiosity, no hesitation, just a quick toss and a sharp remark that left him sitting there like an idiot. That wasn't normal. People always cared about money, especially his. In his world, trust was a currency no one could afford, and yet Sophie had just proved she didn't care about what was in his wallet. She didn't want anything from him. That made her dangerous. Ethan wasn't used to feeling off balance, but something about this woman unsettled him. He pulled out $100 bill, placed it on the table, and slid out of the booth. As he passed by the counter, he expected her to ignore him like before. Instead, she glanced up, then at the cash he had left. That's too much, she said. Ethan smirked. Consider it a reward. Sophie raised an eyebrow. For what? For passing my test, she scoffed. You mean your little wallet trick? Please. You're not the first guy to try that, and you won't be the last. She picked up the bill and slapped it right back onto the counter. I don't take tips from people who underestimate me. Ethan's smirk faded. No one ever rejected his money. His grip tightened around his wallet. You always this stubborn? You always this arrogant? She shot back. He exhaled, half amused, half frustrated. You don't even know who I am, do you? Sophie tilted her head, pretending to think. Let me guess. Some rich guy who's used to everyone falling over themselves to impress him? Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Damn, she was good. For a moment he considered walking away, forgetting the whole thing. But now he needed to know more. Pulling a sleek black card from his wallet, he placed it on the counter. That's my number, he said. Call me when you realize you're too smart to be wasting your time in a place like this. Sophie glanced at the card, then back at him, Don't hold your breath, Cole. The way she said his name told him everything. She already knew who he was, and yet she still didn't care. Ethan left the diner that night with something he hadn't felt in a long time: curiosity. And Sophie? She watched him go, pretending that the business card in front of her didn't make her heart pound. She wasn't sure why, but something told her this wasn't the last time she'd see Ethan Cole. Sophie stared at the sleek black business card sitting on the counter, her fingers twitching at her sides. Ethan Cole. She knew exactly who he was. Everyone did. The billionaire investor, ruthless, calculated, a man who built his empire by outsmarting the competition and never trusting anyone. A man who could make or break businesses with a single decision. And for some reason, he was interested in her. She huffed, grabbing the card and shoving it into her apron pocket. She didn't need his number. She wasn't some starry-eyed girl impressed by money. She had seen enough men like him walk through the diner, men who thought they owned the world. Sophie went back to work, pushing the encounter out of her mind. Or at least, she tried to. 2 days passed, and she thought that was the end of it. But then, on her next shift, something strange happened. At exactly 9 p.m. the diner door swung open and Ethan Cole walked in again. Sophie's stomach flipped, but she kept her expression neutral as she walked over to his table. "You lost another wallet?" she asked dryly. Ethan smirked. "Number, just curious if the service is as bad as I remember." Sophie crossed her arms. "You want sarcasm or coffee first?" "Both." She rolled her eyes but poured him a cup anyway. "Seriously, why are you here?" Ethan leaned back, watching her. "Like I said last time, you're too smart to be working here." Sophie exhaled. "And you're too rich to care." "Maybe I care because I recognize talent when I see it," he said smoothly. Sophie snorted. "Right, because I'm such a hidden genius for carrying plates and pouring coffee." Ethan's smirk faded. "You think that's all you're capable of?" Sophie faltered for a second. No one had ever asked her that before. She straightened, shaking her head. "Look, if you came back just to recruit me into your billionaire club, don't waste your time." Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table and slid it toward her. She hesitated before picking it up. Her stomach twisted when she saw what it was. A job offer. Her name was printed at the top and below it, in clean professional lettering, "Personal Assistant to the CEO, Cole Enterprises." Her throat went dry. "You want me to work for you?" she asked, stunned. Ethan nodded. 1 week. No contract. No strings attached. Try it out. If you hate it, you walk away. No questions asked. Sophie stared at the paper. This was insane. 1 week working alongside one of the most powerful men in the country? She should have said no. Should have laughed and walked away. But instead she found herself asking, "Why me?" Ethan's eyes darkened slightly, his usual arrogance fading. "Because you don't care who I am, and I need someone like that." Sophie swallowed hard. She didn't trust him, but part of her, the part that was sick of long shifts and empty paychecks, wanted to see what happened if she said yes. She placed the paper back on the table, meeting his gaze. 1 week, she said. Ethan smirked. 1 week. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single decision was about to change both of their lives forever. The moment Sophie stepped into the towering glass building of Cole Enterprises, she felt like she had stepped into a completely different world. The lobby was sleek, modern, and filled with people who looked like they belonged. Men in tailored suits, women in heels that clicked against the polished marble floor. She didn't belong, not in her simple black slacks and blouse, not with her diner experience and zero knowledge of corporate life. What the hell was she doing here? Before she could turn around and leave, a voice called her name. Sophie. She turned to see Ethan Cole standing by the elevator, watching her with that same unreadable expression he always had. Today, he was back in his usual uniform, a sharp, dark suit, perfectly tailored, power radiating off him like it was second nature. "You're late," he said. Sophie glanced at the clock on the wall. "It's 8:59. Ethan smirked. "Exactly." She rolled her eyes but followed him into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, she forced herself to breathe. 1 week. That's what she had agreed to. A test run. If she hated it, she could leave. No big deal. Except it already felt like a big deal. The elevator dinged, and when the doors opened, Sophie stepped into Ethan's world. The top floor of Cole Enterprises was nothing like she expected. It wasn't just an office. It was an empire. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a breathtaking view of the city. The open space was filled with high-ranking executives, assistants rushing with folders, and a tension in the air that said every second here mattered. Ethan led her past the chaos and into his office, if you could even call it that. The space was massive. A dark oak desk sat in front of the window, a sleek leather chair behind it. Shelves lined the walls, filled with awards, business deals, and books that probably cost more than her entire year's salary at the diner. He gestured to the desk next to his. "This is yours for the week." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was just shadowing." "You are. But I don't do useless positions. If you're here, you work." She crossed her arms. "What exactly do you expect me to do?" Ethan leaned against his desk, watching her. "Keep up." Before she could fire back, the office door swung open, and a man in his late 50s stormed in, face red with frustration. "Ethan," the man snapped, slamming a folder onto the desk, "you can't be serious about this deal." Sophie took a step back, unsure if she should be here for this, but Ethan didn't even blink. "Relax, Martin," he said calmly, picking up the folder and flipping through it. "It's a smart investment." Martin scoffed. "It's a risk, you know that." Ethan smirked. "Exactly." Sophie frowned, confused, but said nothing. The two men argued back and forth, numbers and figures flying between them like a foreign language. But Sophie was paying attention, and after 5 minutes, she realized something. Ethan wasn't just guessing. He was 3 steps ahead. Every time Martin pointed out a flaw, Ethan already had a counter. Every concern, every argument, it was like he had planned for all of them. The conversation ended with Martin sighing, rubbing his temples. "Fine. But if this backfires, I'm saying I told you so." Ethan smirked. "If it backfires, I'll write you a check to shut you up." Martin left, and Sophie exhaled the breath she didn't realize she was holding. "You do this every day?" she asked. Ethan glanced at her. "Every hour." Sophie shook her head. This wasn't just some billionaire playing boss. He knew exactly what he was doing. And for the first time since she walked into this building, she was actually interested. "All right, Cole," she said, sitting at her desk. "Let's see if I can keep up." Ethan smirked. "Good luck, Harper. You're going to need it." Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning.